Goldie Roger is the man that started the most epic revolution the world has ever seen, as he was the one responsible for initiating the golden age of piracy with his death. Well, some of the credits belong to Ask D Questions, of course, but yeah, let's leave that one for now. You see, without Roger doing what he did, the story would for sure be quite different, right? How would the story work if Roger was born in the same era as Luffy? How would the concept of Pirate King work? Would the One Piece story still make sense? What would the relationship of Luffy and Roger be like? A small hint, under some circumstances, this story could be even more exciting than the original one. But what do we mean by that? Well, let's get right into it. But first, some ground rules in order for the story to make sense. In order for the concept of Pirate King to still apply in this timeline, we will assume that another pirate came before Roger and was crowned King of the Pirates. All people that meet Roger in the original timeline meet and interact with the previous Pirate King in the same way they did in the original plot with Roger. Whitebeard clashes with the previous Pirate King, Ace is the son of the previous Pirate King, and so on and so forth. We will assume that the Roger pirate members will stay the same and follow Roger in this timeline as well, with the only exception being Shanks and Buggy that were part of the previous Pirate King crew instead. Hence, the only change is that Roger and his crew is present in the current era along with Luffy. This story seems quite complicated, right? So someone might ask, why would I try to make this video work? Well, hear me out. How cool would it be if One Piece was an anime with two protagonists, aka both Luffy and Roger instead of just Luffy? Because of the two protagonists, we would be getting episodes focusing on the adventures of both characters and their journeys. And that means two things. In this timeline, we would not know who would end up becoming Pirate King, and the suspense would be much greater. At this point, pretty much everyone knows that Luffy will become the Pirate King one way or another. But what if we didn't know that? The fandom would be split into two camps and develop a rivalry between them, each supporting who deserves to be the next Pirate King, Luffy or Roger. But one thing they would be sure to have in common? Both of the fandoms would be subscribed to this channel because, you know, they still enjoy great One Piece content like you. Having set the foundation of our story, let's get to the exciting part now. Luffy and Roger are both the same age and are both part of the worst generation, since both of them have the same chances of becoming the next Pirate King. Shanks, as the student of the previous Pirate King, gives both characters one legendary item each. Luffy gets the straw hat, while Roger gets something else of great importance. Let's assume that this important item will be the sword of the previous Pirate King. Well, Roger using a sword might make Zoro's job way more difficult, in the sense that Zoro aims to be the world's strongest swordsman. If Roger is present, then that means that Roger is in the way of both Luffy and Zoro's dreams. That's because if Roger succeeds in his goal, then that means he automatically overpowers both Luffy and Zoro. But back to our timeline. Growing up, both Luffy and Roger become parts of the worst generation and the two main candidates to become the next Pirate King. Despite being opponents and despite competing against each other about even the tiniest of things, they would become very good friends once they met. You see, due to their very similar character and ideals, they would surely take a liking to each other. But since none of them considers themselves as heroes, but rather they do what they do because they enjoy doing it, even though they would develop a good friendship between them, each of them would not hesitate to fight each other if he had to, in order to achieve his own ambitions. Something that would be very similar to the relationship of Law, Kid, and Luffy, or even how Roger and Whitebeard were in the original story. The characters would share a mutual respect towards one another, but at the same time, fight when they had to. As the story develops, we would have more arcs in One Piece, as at the time Luffy is fighting an opponent, Roger fights another in a nearby island. Let's just remind everyone that the road to the Grand Line has 7 different paths, and hence, the two protagonists would each go through a different sequence of islands before reaching the Grand Line. While Luffy liberates one island, Roger does the same on another. But do you know what that means? One Piece would take something like double the episodes to finish. Yeah, I know, like 1,500 episodes are not enough already. This way, the story would at least need 2,000 or even 3,000 episodes to finish. And to be honest, I wouldn't complain. More One Piece content? Count me in. While the story unfolds, Luffy and Roger are on their separate journeys. They do not meet each other and are not aware of each other until a point later on. But what we will see is each of their journeys, and we will get glances of their characters, showing how these two are very similar to one another. And yeah, you can guess what that'll cause in the One Piece community. Every One Piece content creator would come up with a theory stating that Roger and Luffy are secret brothers, and here's why. But back to our story. The point where the two characters meet for the first time is during the Marineford arc. We will assume that during Roger's journey, he meets Ace and takes a liking to him. If the two of them become friends, then that would be quite ironic if you ask me, since, Ace actually hated Roger in the canon story. But due to this friendship, during the Marineford War, Roger appears as well and tries to save his friend. That's the first time Luffy and Roger not only meet each other, but actually work together as well. But you see, Roger at this stage would also be a rookie just like Luffy, so the outcome would be pretty much the same. Ace dies all the same, and both Luffy and Roger are powerless against the three admirals. This serves as character development for both of them that realize that they need to get much stronger in order to compete with the big names, and eventually manage to challenge for the title of the Pirate King. Just like Luffy trained with Raleigh after the Marineford War in the original story, in this timeline something similar happens. Since they both need to train, both Luffy and Roger each meet a member of the previous Pirate King's crew and train with them during the time skip. The two characters continue their journey, each following their own path. But fast forward to Wano arc, Luffy and Roger meet once again. You see, in this version of the story, Roger arrives in Wano first. While Luffy is occupied with setting up an alliance with Law and messing up Doflamingo's plans, Roger arrives in Wano before Luffy. However, the fact that Roger is not at a Yonko level yet means that he gets defeated by Kaido just like Luffy was defeated by him when he first arrived in Wano. Roger is in prison. That's the place where he meets Luffy once more once Luffy arrives at Wano as well. After briefly fighting each other because, they're competitive, they form an alliance to fight Kaido. This time around, the alliance consists of the Straw Hats, the Kid Pirates, the Heart Pirates, and the Roger Pirates. Yeah, Kaido won't know what hit him. During Roger's and Luffy's fight with Kaido, there are three possible outcomes. The first case scenario is that the duo manages to defeat Kaido without anyone dying. You see, in the original plot, Luffy's initial death during his fight with Kaido resulted in him awakening his Devil Fruit and hence using 5th gear for the first time. In the first of the three possible outcomes, the duo manages to defeat Kaido without Luffy having to awaken his Devil Fruit in the process. That's because the extra help of Roger is enough to overpower and finally defeat Kaido. As a result, the new Yonkos that take the place of Big Mom and Kaido are now Luffy and Roger instead of Luffy and Buggy. However, if this scenario happens, then after Wano, there are quite a lot of differences to be analyzed. Would Luffy ever awaken 5th gear? And if so, against who? Well, I'll only say that if Luffy died against Rob Lucci in order to awaken 5th gear, then that would be way too anticlimactic, since such a significant power-up should come against a major opponent, and not a random rematch that Luffy had already won against 1,000 chapters ago. Hence, we will assume that Luffy, in this case scenario, proceeds in defeating Rob Lucci without having to unlock 5th gear. Would he ever achieve it? Probably yes, but against a very strong opponent, like an Admiral or maybe Blackbeard. But at this point, I would leave Oda to do his magic and write the story however he saw fit. But wait, because in the second case scenario, we will assume that one of the two, Luffy or Roger, dies against Kaido. It is not far-fetched to believe this is possible, as let's not forget that Luffy's power more than doubled while in 5th gear, and only then was he able to defeat Kaido. So even if Roger and Luffy were to attack Kaido at the same time, if Luffy's not in 5th gear, then one of them might have died first. In this situation, we will assume that the one dying is Luffy. Hence, Luffy now unlocks 5th gear just like in the original plot. You see, if that were to happen, 5th gear Luffy, with the help of Roger, would completely destroy Kaido. In this case, again, the two Yonkos are Luffy and Roger. After Wano, both of them go their separate ways, and the story develops in a similar way like in the original plot. However, an important change occurs during the ending of One Piece. What would that change be? Well, let's see. If we fast forward the story all the way to the end, after the final war arc and after every other candidate is no longer in active pursuit of the One Piece, then the only two crews remaining attempting to claim the title of the Pirate King would be the Roger Pirates and Straw Hat Pirates. The final arc would be an epic clash of the Roger Pirates against the Straw Hat Pirates. Just imagine how this fight would look. Luffy against Roger, Zoro against Raleigh, Sanji versus Scupper Gaban, Chopper against Crocus, Jinbei against Sunbel, and so on and so forth. This battle would absolutely break the internet. Let's not forget that the fanbase has always been split from the start, each claiming who would be the next Pirate King. This battle would decide that. If that were to happen, you could actually let us know in the comments down below who you think would end up winning. Would Luffy be the one to come out on top, or Roger? But before that, let's analyze the third way the fight against Kaido could turn out. The third way this fight could develop is by having Roger die first. From what we know, Roger did not eat any devil fruits, let alone the mythical Zoan Hito Hito no Mi model sun god Nika. So if he were to die, that would be it. He would not come back to life like Luffy did. The story would then develop in pretty much exactly the same way as it is currently developing in the canon story, as Luffy would go on to defeat Kaido on his own, in the same way he did in the original story. But since you enjoy One Piece content, check out this video where we present 36 interesting facts you probably did not know about Tony Chopper. Go on, check it out!